SMT Nation, we back nation. Something is happening that I've never seen AT&T do before, and that's give a damn about wireless. All of a sudden they care. Why? Let's deep dive into this. Article will be linked for you in the description as we kind of overview some of the elements from it. You guys will get my commentary, and then you'll get just an overview of the article. All right, so I always separate the two, but I provide both. So link is in the description, and if you want to support the SMT and all the content here on the channel, you could do that. Links are in the description. Okay, so at a Semaphore event, AT&T CEO John Stankey was discussing what's going on in the broadband world. Obviously, discussions about wireline business, connectivity, bridging the digital divide, and also mobile networks. All right, and his quote from this part of this interview or discussion was, "You want more competition and resiliency in broadband in the U.S., you need deep spectrum. The U.S. is not in an enviable position right now for the next 10 years relative to some other developed nations." Folks, I actually did a video on this topic months ago on the Patreon, clamoring for the United States to actually put together a true, effective, holistic spectrum plan. A networking spectrum plan that could be sustainable in the future for all of the commercial wireless needs and private wireless needs. Right? So I covered that. I polled, the patrons and the YouTube members at the time to see what their thoughts and opinions were. I think I even made it part of a live stream that was exclusive to those communities. But this is huge. This is so important. And, to be honest with you, this is kind of a shift. AT&T, for its part in this, has never really seemed to publicly care too much about wireless, and now they obviously do. Right? He mentioned and highlighted one of the weaknesses, which was the FCC can't even distribute spectrum licenses. The FCC can't even technically auction any spectrum, and that's because they lost their authority, their spectrum authority that was stripped to them by Congress and would have to be reinstated. Right? And of course, this goes back to Spectrum Auction 108, where T-Mobile still awaits their licenses that they rightfully purchased and won an auction, but they're waiting. Right? And he also highlighted another problem, which actually kind of ruined the 3 gigahertz frequencies, and that's CBRS, right? And the DoD, Department of Defense, right? Controlling such a large swath of spectrum within those middle frequencies, within like the 3.5, the 3.45, the 3.7 gigahertz range, right? We're talking about all that 3 gigahertz action. The DoD sits on a lot of that, and actually all the way down to 3.1 gigahertz. And we've seen how CBRS has played out. Less than ideal. All right, AT&T didn't buy any CBRS, so, clearly they didn't feel good about it, that it wasn't a full power band. DoD spectrum, it's always going to be subject to getting powered down whenever Department of Defense has use for it. And that impacts AT&T directly, and Verizon with CBRS and those types of things, right? Even with PALs, priority access licenses, the DoD still has priority to those, right? At those moments or whatever. So the rules with power and low power and priority, it's been a mess, right? The FCC, they haven't done a good job of this. It's been a problem. Of course, while you can't fix the mistakes of the past, you can prevent additional mistakes from happening in the future. Stop focusing on just Wi-Fi. Stop focusing on spectrum sharing and start focusing on separating these things. There needs to be a large swath of spectrum for commercial use cases. I hate to say it, but Stanky's right. You're looking at the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years. Well, what's the plan? There's nothing there. A holistic national spectrum plan. He is correct. And when you look at, what is the CBRS spectrum doing? In some cases, it's being used properly. There are unlicensed applications where it's used for fixed wireless access, home internet, home broadband. Some carriers are using it, on their radio gear, on their radio access network. But it's just not carrying a bulk of traffic. It's not adding or enhancing connectivity within the country to any type of scale, right? So he's right to that extent. And I'm not saying AT&T needs handouts. Trust me, guys. I'm not here to protect corporations, but I am here to view our mobile networking across our country, trying to push it forward as a strength, right? We don't see these same problems happening in other countries. They're much more comprehensive. They're much more considerate, careful, calculated, and forward-looking. The FCC has been an absolute train wreck. I mean, for decades. And of course, all this can change with proper considerations, foresight, and planning. And he's calling for it, and I agree. And I hope Verizon gets on this train. I hope T-Mobile gets on this train. I hope all parties that could be involved and have a voice echo the same sentiment as John Stankey, and then we get that moving forward. So I agree with him. Do you? Do you think that John Stankey's commentary is on point, or do you disagree with it? Again, I'm not here to boost his proposal, because obviously he's doing it to help his company, but I think holistically as a nation, we sure could use this. All the carriers could. The networks would be better, faster, more capacitive, and we use these networks, folks. We need it. And there's going to be growth in usage, and there's going to be more customers and more connected devices, right? And you can't bridge the digital divide without spectrum and fiber, and those things need to be addressed. What say you? You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.